Most people today spend almost their entire lives indoors, inside sealed houses and apartments, breathing recycled air, surrounded by screens, synthetic materials, dust, cleaning chemicals, and dry, artificial environments. And I think people underestimate how much their environment affects the way they feel, mentally and physically. For thousands of years, humans lived in environments with constant airflow, natural materials, and daily exposure to plants and nature. Even indoor spaces weren't sealed the way they are today. Now, most modern homes are essentially closed systems. Very little natural ventilation, more synthetic materials, and a build-up of things like dust, VOCs, volatile organic compounds, and off-gassing from furniture, carpets, rugs, and cleaning products over time. And while I'm not saying plants magically fix all that, I do think we underestimate how much they can contribute to a healthier feeling indoor environment, not just visually, but through things like air freshness, humidity balance, dust capture, oxygen exchange, and exposure to certain airborne compounds, like formaldehyde over time. So in this video, I'm not just talking about plants that look nice, I'm talking about indoor plants that genuinely help support a healthier feeling indoor environment, while also being realistic to actually keep alive. The problem is, most people don't really think about indoor plants at all. They see them as outdoor things or just decoration at best. And the people who do buy them usually fall into two groups. Those who pick them purely because they look nice, and those who end up killing them within a couple of weeks. And honestly, I never really thought about indoor plants either, until I started getting more interested in health and my environment. A few years ago, I started bringing indoor plants into my home as I became more aware of things like indoor air quality, natural living, and creating a healthier space to spend time in. But at that point, I had absolutely no experience with plants. Some of the plants I bought are still alive years later with very little effort, and others died embarrassingly fast. So in this video, I'm going to go through the best indoor plants, the ones that actually worked for me, the ones that didn't, which ones are genuinely beginner friendly, which ones are better for bigger spaces, and which ones you need to be careful with if you have dogs or pets at home. Because if you're trying to build a healthier lifestyle, your environment quietly plays a much bigger role than most people realise. If you're new here, my name's Jack. I make videos on holistic self-improvement, everything from physical and mental health to lifestyle, nutrition, and building better environments to live in. Beginner-friendly plants. So the first category is the easiest place to start. The plants that basically anyone can keep alive. Because if you are completely new to this, you don't want fragile plants that need constant attention. You want plants that can tolerate mistakes and still survive. And these four are probably the best place to start. Snake plant, spider plant, aloe vera, and peace lily. Snake plant. The snake plant is probably one of the most reliable indoor plants you can have. It doesn't need much light, it doesn't need frequent watering, and it can survive in very low maintenance conditions. Mine is still as good as new years later. I actually have two now and they've never really struggled. From an indoor environment point of view, it's often considered one of the more resilient air-supporting plants. It can absorb certain chemicals like formaldehyde, even in low-light conditions, which is one of the common indoor pollutants found in things like furniture and cleaning products. What makes it interesting is that, unlike most plants, it also releases oxygen at night, which is why people often recommend it for bedrooms. But honestly, the main reason it's so popular is simple. It's extremely hard to kill, very drought tolerant, and just keeps going with minimal effort. Then you've got the spider plant. This one feels a bit more lively and active compared to something like the snake plant. It grows quickly, produces lots of little offshoots, or babies, and slowly fills out a space over time without you really trying. It's also one of the easiest and most beginner-friendly plants you can own. Even if you slightly mess up the watering, it usually bounces back pretty well. Mine, again, is still as good as new. From an indoor environment perspective, it's often considered one of the better plants for supporting air quality, especially when it comes to helping reduce things like formaldehyde in indoor air. Those little offshoots it produces also increase the overall leaf surface area over time, which basically means more plant interacting with the air around it. Not only that, these offshoots or babies you can then replant into different pots and they'll grow into a full spider plant like the other one. So overall, it's just a very easy plant to live with, low maintenance, fast growing, and great for adding a bit more life to a room. Then there's aloe vera. Most people know it for skin or minor burns, but it also works well as a low maintenance indoor plant. It doesn't like to be overwatered, and it actually prefers to be left alone most of the time. From a home environment perspective, it fits well into bedrooms or windowsills, as another low effort plant that contributes to a more balanced indoor space. One thing to mention though, aloe vera is toxic to dogs and cats if they eat it, so that's something to be aware of. Then finally, in this beginner group, the peace lily. This one is a bit more refined visually. It has those dark green leaves, white flowers, and it gives a room a softer, calmer feel overall. It also responds very clearly when it needs water, which actually makes it easier to understand than a lot of other plants, because it visibly droops when it's thirsty. Mine is alive and doing well. It hasn't flowered since the first year, from what I remember, so it probably needs a bit more consistent care and light. But beyond how it looks, the peace lily is also often considered one of the stronger indoor plants for air quality support. It's known for helping absorb certain VOCs, volatile organic compounds, including things like, again, formaldehyde, benzene, and trichloroethylene, which can come from furniture, cleaning products, paints, and other synthetic materials inside the home. And it still does well in lower light indoor environments, so you don't need a bright room for it to survive. That said, it does need a bit more consistency than plants like the snake plant or spider plant, and it's also toxic to dogs and cats if ingested. So definitely keep that in mind if you have pets at home. So overall, this first group is what I'd call the foundation plants. They're low maintenance, forgiving, and they quietly support a healthier feeling indoor environment without needing much from you. Plants to make a home feel more alive. So the next group is where things start to shift. These plants don't just survive in a space, they actually change the feeling of it. They look more lush, more natural, and more like you've brought a bit of the outside world indoors. But the trade-off is, they're less forgiving. And just to zoom out slightly, this is where you really start to notice something interesting. Modern homes aren't just visually different from natural environments. They also tend to have lower airflow, more dry air, and a build-up of things like dust, off-gassing from furniture, and general indoor pollutants over time. So while these plants obviously help visually, part of what people are responding to is also that subtle shift in air freshness, humidity, and overall feel of the space when living things are present. Boston fern. The Boston fern is a great example of this category. Visually, it's probably one of the nicest indoor plants you can have. Really soft, dense, almost jungle-like. It instantly makes a room feel more natural and alive. But in my experience, this is where things start to get a bit more difficult. I actually killed mine after a few months. And looking back, I think the main issue was dry indoor air. These plants naturally prefer much more moisture in the air than most modern homes usually have. Which is interesting, because one of the reasons people like Boston ferns is that they can actually help add moisture back into dry indoor environments, while also helping filter certain indoor compounds like formaldehyde and xylene. But the downside is they need that same humidity themselves to really survive. So this is one of those plants that tends to do much better in naturally humid rooms like bathrooms, or in homes that don't have very dry air. And I think it's a good example of a plant that looks incredible and can genuinely support the feel of an indoor environment, but only if the environment is right for the plant as well. Then there's English ivy. It's often seen outdoors, but it can be grown indoors too. When it's healthy, it gives a really natural trailing effect that makes a space feel more alive, and personally this was probably my favourite. But again, it's sensitive. Light changes, water imbalance, and dry indoor air can all affect it. And this is another one I didn't have long-term success with. I'm not entirely sure what went wrong. Likely a mix of overwatering through winter as the pot it was in was really small, and probably the dry indoor air as well. So this category is really where you start to see something important. Not all plants naturally thrive in modern sealed indoor environments. Some of them actually respond to things like humidity levels, airflow, and general indoor air quality, and in turn they can also influence those same things by contributing to oxygen exchange and helping balance the overall indoor environment slightly. But the key point is they're less set and forget and more environment dependent. But with the right care and probably someone more experienced than I was, they can definitely be much more successful. Bigger plants that change the whole room. So the final category is less about small individual plants, and more about the overall feel of a room. These are the larger plants that don't just sit in the background, they actually become part of the space. And these are also the plants that really only work in bigger spaces. I would not really put these in a small, cramped room and expect them to do the same job. Not only that, you'd be tripping over them all the time. They work best in places like a living room, office, or a larger bedroom corner, where they actually have room to grow properly. Money tree. The money tree is one of those plants that immediately changes how a room feels. It has structure, light, and presence, and it makes a space feel more intentional and less empty. And beyond the visual side, larger plants like this still contribute to a healthier feeling indoor environment through natural oxygen exchange, helping balance carbon dioxide levels, and generally making a space feel less sterile and artificial over time. There's also a psychological effect to it that people underestimate. A room with a living plant in it just feels more settled, more natural, and easier to be in. Areca palm. The areca palm is probably one of the best plants for creating a more natural indoor atmosphere. It adds softness, density, and a kind of tropical feel that can make a room feel less dry and more alive overall. It also helps bring a bit of moisture back into indoor air, which is useful in homes that feel especially dry. But again, this is not just about how it looks. It's about how it changes the atmosphere of the space you're in. And because it grows larger and fuller than most indoor plants, it works best in brighter, more open spaces, where it actually has room to spread out properly. And bamboo is similar. It has that clean, structured look that instantly makes a space feel more natural and balanced. Because it grows vertically and can get fairly large, it works best in bigger spaces where it can actually become part of the room rather than just sitting unnoticed in a corner. And beyond just the visual side, bamboo is also often associated with helping support indoor air quality by filtering certain airborne compounds like formaldehyde, benzene, and even small amounts of carbon monoxide over time. It can also help add a bit of moisture back into dry indoor air, which is probably one of the reasons spaces with larger plants tend to feel less stale overall. So this final category is not just about looks or changing the environment visually, it's still part of the same overall idea. These are some of the best indoor plants for supporting a healthier feeling indoor space through things like natural oxygen exchange, air freshness, and overall balance in air quality. But the key difference is scale. These are not really small bedroom plants. They are better suited to larger spaces where they actually have room to grow and do their job properly, like living rooms, offices, or open corners of a home. So plants like the money tree, areca palm, and bamboo are less about fitting into a small space, and more about shaping a larger indoor environment. And when placed well, a single larger plant can genuinely change how a room feels, not just visually, but in how open, calm, and naturally balanced it feels overall. Less artificial, less empty, and more grounded. And there's also a psychological side to this that people underestimate. Having living plants around tends to make a space feel calmer and more peaceful. Even just looking after them gives you a bit of routine and purpose. And over time, it changes how it feels to live in that space. So overall, I think the bigger point here is that our homes affect us more than we realise. Most of us spend the majority of our lives indoors now, and even small things like airflow, natural elements, humidity, and the general feel of a space can subtly affect how we feel over time. And while indoor plants obviously aren't some magical fix for health, I do think they're one of the simplest ways to make a home feel healthier, fresher, calmer, and less artificial. You also don't need to turn your house into a jungle overnight. Even just a few beginner plants like a snake plant, spider plant, and aloe vera can make a real difference. And even in a small place, you can fit quite a few if you want to. I mean, I have 9 plants in my bedroom, so it doesn't take a huge house to make this work. The goal is not perfection, it is just creating a healthier space that you actually enjoy being in. And yes, they all look good as well, but the deeper thing is having something living in the background that supports the environment through air quality, humidity, and all the small things that add up over time. You buy them once, put them there, look after them from time to time, and they just work away in the background pretty much 24/7. So start small, see what works in your space, and build from there. If you've got any indoor plants that have survived your neglect, or any that died almost immediately, let me know in the comments because I'm genuinely curious what people have had success with. If you learned something new, please like and subscribe to keep learning. If you know anyone that's interested in this kind of content, please share this to them as it really helps me out. If you're trying to improve your health, you will like the videos in the playlist on screen now. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one, and remember, stay positive even when it seems everything is against you.